So here's another view on the airline thing. Let's go take a look. The emotional support debate is tougher than you think. Some of us might have gotten a good chuckle when a woman tried to bring her emotional support peacock on a flight. All humor aside, however, the incident served to reveal an elephant in the cabin and a far more complicated debate about how airlines treat animals, disabled passengers, and those who abuse either. In response to negative publicity surrounding alleged emotional support animals, including the attack of a passenger, airlines like Delta and United are revising their policies with regard to who flies inside the cabin. Via statement to the Washington Post, Sarah Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, claimed the changes will reduce fraud and protect passengers with disabilities. Now, how would she know if she's not a passenger with a disability? Yet it appears that individuals with disabilities, myself included, as well as the organizations that advocate for them, disagree. Toni Ann Ernst, president and founder of the International Association of Assistance Dog Partners, IAADP, released a statement predicting the revised policy will cause a great deal of harm to travelers with legitimate service animals. Another statement released by Christine Benninger, president and CEO of Guide Dogs for the Blind, explains how requiring people with disabilities to present a health certificate for their service dogs 48 hours before flying is discriminatory. It denies them access to last-minute travel, which can be crucial for business or in an emergency. If somebody is traveling with a legitimate service animal, there should not be any additional hoops that they have to jump through, contests Benninger, who believes the changes cause undue hardship and are in violation of the Air Carrier Access Act, ACAA, the statute that protects people with disabilities during air travel, which is exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. If my father has another sudden need for heart surgery, I wouldn't be able to get on a plane today or tomorrow to get to see him, laments fellow traveler Alexandra Harper, who requires the assistance of her service dog Otto. Service animals versus bad ideas. The new policy will not only make flying less accessible for people with disabilities requiring service animals, but it will also make it more expensive. Veterinarians will charge for the certificates, which must be submitted at least 48 hours in advance, and will only be valid for 2 weeks. This means round-trip itineraries will often require 2 vet visits, one in each direction, as if we can afford that. Traveling with disabilities is already challenging enough. Harper notifies the airline about her service dog in advance, at which time they guarantee reasonable accommodation as is stipulated by the ACAA, Title 14, CFR, Part 382. Yet all too often, when she arrives at the gate, the airline is unprepared to accommodate her disability as required by law. Sometimes it's because they've already reached the maximum number of animals allowed inside the cabin. There's no priority for service dogs when it comes to this allowance. It's determined by when the passenger's booked. While the popularity of flying with pets keeps growing, this allowance hasn't been raised to meet the demand, thus posing an accessibility obstacle for people with disabilities. Harper is also denied boarding when there's a stroller necessitating the same space that she'd need for her service dog. Half the time, the agent says there's nothing they can do. The alternative solution is hardly better. The airline forces another passenger to give up their seat. This upsets other passengers who direct their anger at the service animal owner. I think the airlines don't believe me over the phone, Harper says. When I show up at the airport, they consider me a problem they put off dealing with until the last minute. Case in point, Harper was recently denied access to the first 4 flights she wanted because they'd reached the maximum animal allowance. She was then denied access to another because of a stroller. To make matters worse, her purpose for flying was to seek medical treatment for her disability. A theoretical piece of baby gear has priority over me, laments Harper. Right idea versus wrong placement. But then there's the counterpoint. Healthy passengers who take advantage of accommodations intended for people with disabilities so that their pets can be in the cabin. People will fake disability because they don't want to fly animals as cargo, counters Earns. It's not 100% safe and they don't want to lose their pet. I don't blame them one bit, says travel agent Ruth DeMuth. There's no way I'd subject my fur babies to flying on cargo. There is always that risk of injury or death due to severe conditions and poor handling. It's important for travelers to understand that flying animals in the cargo area is extremely dangerous, discloses Colleen O'Brien, Vice President of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA. Get away from them as fast as you can. They're nutcases. It's not uncommon for them to be lost, injured, or even killed. The potential for tragedy is even higher when flights are delayed and the cargo hold experiences extreme temperatures. Combined with loud noises and the lack of pressurization, flying cargo can cause animals to experience distress. There's also the risk of suffocation when cargo shifts and their carriers are crushed. Yeah, I know Holly didn't do too well when she was shipped in. She was flipped out. It doesn't surprise me that people would go to great lengths to avoid putting their animals in cargo, says Christopher Berry, attorney for the Animal Legal Defense Fund, ALDF. Good people. He explains how the minimum standards outlined by the Animal Welfare Act fall well below what most Americans would consider acceptable for transporting their pets. Worse yet, he describes the enforcement of these standards by the Department of Agriculture as notoriously lax. Last month, the Department of Transportation, DOT, released an updated Animal Annual Incident Report. Utilizing this information, I attempted to calculate the risk by percentage. While they report an average of 47.25 deceased, injured, or lost pets per year, the 0.25 being that poor little hamster, I couldn't find any figures for total number of pets flown, which were necessary in order to complete my assessment. In search of answers, I called the Aviation Consumer Protection Division and was told they don't keep track of the total number of animals that fly cargo. The over 2 million estimate published on their website isn't substantiated by any actual data. It's impossible to accurately assess the risk of flying cargo without this figure, which means there's no telling how safe or dangerous it really is to our pets. The discrepancies don't stop there. According to Berry, the DOT's report doesn't paint a complete picture because they only count commercially flown pets in their figures. The report doesn't include its incidents involving animals en route to wildlife conservatories, zoos, and research facilities. Furthermore, airlines aren't required to report incidents that involve pets if they suspect it had a pre-existing condition. And you know they're going to deem it to have a pre-existing condition whether there's any evidence or not. You know that. Every business should be held accountable, declares travel agent Connie Riker, who specializes in special needs travel. People's pets are part of their family. They rely on the promises made by airlines when making the decision to entrust their family members with them. Without a proper dedicated team taking care of these animals and proper shipping conditions, there will always be risk involved, adds DeMuth. Service versus support versus imposters. Meanwhile, Delta reports that the number of passengers traveling with emotional support or service animals has increased 150% in the past 3 years. Due to the influx of imposters, passengers with legitimate disabilities face even more challenges. This is especially true for those who have invisible disabilities that are not immediately apparent. That's for sure. People misjudge us, harass us, and interfere with our service dog's ability to do its job, Harper says. They think the handler isn't really disabled and is trying to get away with something. That's true as well. So why not require people with disabilities to clearly identify themselves? That would be illegal, counters Harper, which I confirmed with a call to the Department of Justice. Plus, do you really want to create a society where disabled people are singled out and required to flash a special form of identification? Requiring paper will not yield any desired outcomes, Earns mentions. The online fake service animal industry will benefit by making more money than they already do cranking out certificates, vests, ID cards, and other fake gear. Health certificates do not ensure any kind of behavioral qualification, adds Benninger, who suggests that Delta policy changes fail to address the issue of ill-behaved animals and the negative impact they have on travel experiences for everyone on board. Everyone I spoke with who uses service dogs agreed. It's for lack of training that an animal may pose a threat to the public's safety, and that's not going to be annulled by a trip to the veterinarian. I agree as well. Riker asserts that anyone who is planning on bringing their animal around other people should know how it will behave in public. Harper agrees. I agree as well. Describing how Otto has been attacked by wayward emotional support animals on multiple occasions. I do not think that they are bad people either, says Benninger, who describes the motive of not wanting to subject their pets to flying cargo as noble. I don't agree there. I actually think this is done with good intent. No, it's not. They're lying and they know it. The problem is that most pets aren't trained for travel. And when those animals become stressed, they act out. Yes, they do. This is problematic, not only in terms of safety, but it undermines the confidence of legitimate service dogs and impacts their ability to assess people with disabilities. Earns speculates that most doctors don't even meet the emotional support animal before signing off on letters, let alone evaluate their potential to be a public hazard. Doctors are not animal specialists. They are human, health specialists. They are not specialists in animals. They are not specialists in animal training. I don't think a medical doctor for humans should be expected to or should evaluate animals for safety. That's ridiculous. They are human health specialists. They don't know the first thing, some of them, about dogs and dog training or animals and animal training. Service animals, on the other hand, receive extensive training. Otto, for example, underwent 2.5 years of training, that's 23 dog years, to become a service dog. Our dogs start training when they're 3 days old, notes Behringer, whose nonprofit organization provides guide dogs for the blind and visually impaired. Hear that, other service dog users out there that say young service dogs shouldn't be in training in public? Guide dogs start at 3 days old. Just saying. A true service dog stays directly with the handler, says Riker, not way off at the edge of a lead trying to get the attention from passers-by and barking at other dogs. Talk versus action. Instead of punishing passengers traveling with legitimate service dogs, Earns suggests an assessment of emotional support and service animals by security to determine if they are fit for public transportation. Denying access for ill-behaved animals would protect other passengers and deter pet owners who abuse accommodations intended for people with disabilities. problem there. The fakers will learn to carry their dogs, which reduces likelihood of ill behavior. They'll learn to carry their dogs when the security guard is wherever the security guard is located. And then, once they get past the security guard, put the dog down, then the dog starts misbehaving. That's how that will go. An animal that is being given access to public transportation needs to be able to demonstrate that it can be well behaved, asserts Riker. Then there's a second solution that would alleviate the problem without discriminating against people with disabilities. Make a huge effort to make cargo safer. Really put in money, says Earns. Airlines have an ethical obligation to keep all their passengers safe, adds O'Brien of PETA, which cannot be guaranteed as long as they continue to treat living, breathing beings like suitcases by stowing them in the cargo hold. We need to see a marked response from the airlines, says Barry. People want to be safe. They want their pets to be safe. And right now, they're not satisfied with the options. Benninger uses the hospitality industry as an example, underscoring how hotels have evolved and become more pet-friendly after recognizing four-legged family as a new social norm. We're moving away from the time when pets lived in our backyard. Part of what's going on here is that more people love their pets and want them to be a part of their life. DeMuth thinks it's the airline's responsibility to find a resolution that doesn't endanger animals or infringe on disability rights. If they don't do so willingly, then it will be up to lawmakers to design and enforce more acceptable policies. Harper, on the other hand, is less optimistic. She's concerned that people with disabilities are too disenfranchised and underrepresented to be considered by the Federal Aviation Administration and liability lawyers that shape the rules. Then there are animals that literally cannot speak for themselves, particularly vulnerable because they don't have the legal value given to human life. Combine apathy for animals with the lack of justice for one of the most overlooked minority groups in the country, and it's a potential recipe for future calamity. So, my comments on this. They are disregarding all the small, like dogs, small animals that are taken into the cabin. They're lied about so that they don't have to be in a crate and the owners don't have to pay the in-cabin fee. Everything they've said disregards these people. These people aren't going to stop. It's not that their animals aren't safe. They're not wanting to pay the fee and have the animals in a crate, so they lie. That, making the cargo safer isn't going to do anything about that. So there is that segment of people. And yes, cargo is bad. It is. But it's not an excuse to lie and break the law either. There's just no excuses there. Cargo is not safe. I avoid flying any animal cargo as much as humanly possible. Holly was flown from another country in cargo. She was flipped out, terrified. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know who I was. Yeah, she was terrified. She was backed in the back of the crate. She wouldn't come forward. She would, we had to load the whole crate with her in it into the back of the truck. And I kept trying to ply her with goodies. She wasn't going to have, she was terrified. At the airport, I tried to reach in and pat her, and she kind of, lifted her lip a little bit at me. She was so scared. Halfway back home, which was a couple-hour drive, we stopped, got a little something to eat, and, I got in the back of the truck and, opened the crate and tried to coax her forward again. And she was still pretty scared, but by that time she was not completely flipped out. And so then I was able to pet her. I put a collar on her, and I left a leash attached to the collar with the end, right near the door, so that when we got home, I would be able to get her out, you know, because as far as she was concerned, she was going to spend the rest of her life in that crate. That was her only safe space. So yeah, it's bad, and it does flip them out. So you avoid doing it. You avoid flying them. You choose other ways for you and your animals to get to the other place, train, bus, something, driving. You just avoid it until they get the picture that they're going to get more passengers by straightening up their animal cargo, you know, requirements, handling policies, all of that. And fakers, the people that are not disabled, not doctor diagnosed, they're making it up, and they know who they are. They're making it up to have their animal fly in the cabin. They are bad people. They are bad people. They are. They are breaking the law. They are making life harder for me and everybody else with the service dog, and they don't care. Numerous, you know, parties that do this have said on multiple occasions, we don't care if we hurt the disabled people. We want what we want. We're going to do what we want. So yeah, they are bad people. They are obnoxious, rat bag, slime bag, law-breaking idiots. That's what they are. So anyway, those were my comments on this. You might have a different view. Anyway, till next video. Bye.